All right, welcome back to another summary and LAPC, which means life application per chapter. And today we shall be doing Psalm 3 as we are continuing the series on the Psalms. Let us get right into it. All right, so the outlines of Psalm 3 include David's trouble of many around who persecute him. In this particular psalm, that of his own son. David's lament, David's confidence in God, and David's battle cry toward God. All right, the Lord helps his troubled people. The theme of this psalm, as we read, shows us the trouble which David was dealing with. So, this psalm was written when David fled from his son Absalom, who wanted to take over his father's throne. Impatient to be king, he gathered support to dethrone his father, which led David to flee. We find that in 2 Samuel 15, chapter 15 to 18. The psalm shows David calling upon the Lord concerning the increase of men who trouble his life, those who seek to kill him. In verses 1 to 2, he mentions that they revolt against him and make statements such as that there is no help for him. There is no help for him in God. So these are the statements that these men made, and we find that statement in the New King James Version. Yet, as David laments, he becomes reassured that God will not let those who come up against him overtake him. He remains confident that no matter how many peoples arise, the Lord God is his shield. So there's a phrase said in verse 7 of Psalm 3, and it says, "You have broken the teeth of the ungodly." Now, to many or to some, that might sound like a bit of a harsh statement, but let's actually dissect what it means. This phrase stated in verse 7 of Psalm 3 shows God's removal of the strength and power of the wicked and the ungodly. He has thwarted their plans to do evil and carry out harm. David as king faced many trials and hardship against foes, and though many caused much affliction to him, the Lord never forsook him, giving him strength against his enemies. As we know, David was a man after God's own heart, though falling short in different areas of his life. Many of us do as well. He was repentant and earnestly sought God. Therefore, God was a constant shield and helper in times of trouble, as stated in the psalm. He broke the teeth of the ungodly nations which tried to come against Israel and David. All right, so God's protection. In times of trouble, many of the psalmists spoke to God to quickly save them from the troubles at hand. And David, being no stranger to problems, relied heavily on the protection of God, acknowledging that God would not lay him into the hands of the enemy. Yet, David still felt deeply troubled many a time. Absalom, his son, when read about in 2 Samuel, is trying to overthrow him here. David, during all this, was in an emotional conflict because he loved his son dearly. But regardless of trying to take over the throne, God stood with David, giving him strength to bear many similar situations as this one. This is what led David to be confident in the Lord, yet also crying out in that moment in verses 7, "Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God," still signaling a battle cry for God to defend him speedily. Though God had saved him many a time, he still cried and poured his heart out to God to save him from those that are trying to harm his life. And then let's jump down into the LAPC, life application per chapter. So, from reading this psalm, we understand that it may not always be the ones away from us who do us wrong, but it may be sometimes the closest people to us who may be the ones who inflict pain onto us. Many broken homes are like this, which is a sad reality. We see David here is not a stranger to this, as many of the ones closest to him tried to throw him beneath the bus or take what he had. His own flesh and blood, his son Absalom. But even in all this, David relied on God for justice and to help in his current situation. Do we do the same? Is that something that we do? Or do we try to take matters into that of our own hand? Do we try to prove that we are right? Or let God be the one to handle it for us? We ought to pray and rely on God more often to help when great injustice may have been done to us, even by the ones who are closest to us. Sometimes we're quick and ready to jump and defend our case, but sometimes we have to be very quiet about it and let God be the one to defend us and show us in the right if we are placed in a position of seeming to be wrong. So this was the summary of Psalm 3. I hope that it was very informative, and as we could see that it is very relatable as well. Something for us to reflect on, and meditate on as well. Hope to see you guys in the next summer video.